back to Whaling City Ghost Presents. This week we're going to have an equipment show, and we've brought in a couple of the members of the team. This is Mark Pacheco to my left, and he's actually the lead investigator of Whaling City Ghosts. To my right, we have David Faria, and he's our interview specialist. And all together, we have quite a bit of equipment on the team. So I thought it would be great to bring them in and go over some of the stuff that's available out there. There's a lot of people who dream of doing paranormal investigation, and it's a good idea to have an idea of what is out there.
Hi, my name is Mark Pacheco. I've been with Whaling City Ghosts for about 2 years now. I've been investigating the paranormal for about 12 years, though. Today we're going to go over a little bit of the tools of the trade, what we use to help us investigating a location to determine whether something going on is truly paranormal or not. First, we're going to go over EMF meters. That stands for electromagnetic field. What we're trying to do is separate the man-made electromagnetic fields from natural fields. Now, man-made fields can be anything from wiring, TV sets, power lines, a lot of different sources like that. Determining man-made causes versus paranormal causes is very important to us. So we're going to start going over some of the older equipment and less expensive equipment first, moving up to some of our more favorite pieces of equipment to use and experiment with. David?
As Luann had said before, my name's Dave, and the reason I'm an expert is because I'm old enough to be a ghost. And this just happens to be the instrument that I'm going to talk about that I'm sure all of you have seen on TVs, on different ghost shows.
And that's the K2 meter?
K2 meter. And the reason I like it is because it's very simple. There's one button that turns it on and one button that turns it off. And it's relatively inexpensive compared to some of the equipment that we have here. The problem is other fields generated by, in this environment, cameras and TVs, and that does affect it. And if you're in a home, electronics. But again, it's great for a new person who wants to start out in this field, that they can actually use this. And I've been on some ghost escorts where this has worked absolutely fantastic. There was no electric fields in the area. We were in a tunnel in a fort that was deep underground, and whether it was a spirit or not, anybody can call that into question, but we were able to communicate with something there by using the EMF, the K2 meter.
You kind of nailed it right on the hammer right on the head there, David. I really dislike the K2 meter for some of the reasons that he mentioned, but I find that it's too simplistic. It's too easily fooled. It's very easy to set it off with a cell phone, for instance. And you really have to be careful when you're going on public tours, because not everyone's going to leave their cell phones at home, which is one of our first rules behind no smoking, drinking, all that obvious stuff on an investigation, is no cell phones, because the ambient radiation that can leak out of it basically can easily set these off. A lot of these other meters too, to be fair. I just really dislike this one. It's a little too simple. I know David's model is a little nicer than the older models, where you would actually have to stick a coin inside to keep the switch on. And right there, that's just poor design. So I'd toss this one. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about one of the older Gauss Masters. Very inexpensive piece of equipment. It is an analog meter, VU meter right here, which is a little faster than some of the digital meters when you want instant results, and that's a good thing. Again, this is designed, like some of the other equipment, primarily to pick up man-made EMF fields, electromagnetic fields. And we should probably distinguish the difference there between electrical fields and magnetic fields, because the two are related, but not exactly the same thing. Electrical fields will be put out by AC power lines, computers, things like that. Magnetic fields can be put out by any magnetic source, whether it be electromagnetic or just a piece of metal, a magnet. So the two are different but related without getting too much into physics. Not a bad introductory meter, inexpensive, but once we get into the other meters, you'll see that I would rather spend a little more money and get a much more reliable instrument. David, did you have any opinion on that one there?
The only comment, again, it's simple, easy to use, and for someone who's watching their budget and they're just starting this out and they're not sure whether they want to pursue this, it's small, you can have a lot of fun with it, but you have to kind of keep in mind its parameters and where it works and how it works.
Next, we have the X-Tech EMF meter, and this one is primarily for magnetic fields. As you can see, it's measured in milligauss and microteslas, and that is for magnetic fields. That's a measuring unit for magnetic fields. And this one here is very inexpensive. You're not really sure where it's detecting because a lot of these will have the sensor up top. A lot of them will have the sensor in the center. You're not really sure. Whereas something like a tri-field meter, for instance, is designed to detect from the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis up and down. So it's really easy to pick up things without maneuvering your hands all about and trying to catch a reading.
That's one of the things that I don't like about that particular meter is if you move, you get a false reading on it.
A lot of the inexpensive ones, especially the ones with the separate sensor, I really dislike those too because you can move around the sensor and you're going to get false readings all day. Really dislike those. Again, you want to invest a little more money. Don't have to go and break the bank. Just go on eBay and find some good deals and find some better equipment. Another point that Dave was talking about is when you're first starting out, that's one thing when you want to experiment, try different pieces of equipment without spending too much money. But if you're going out primarily for tours, that's a different goal than our goal here. Our goal here is to operate in a scientific manner, writing things down, recording observations, because that's basically what we do, is we have to record these observations and re-observe the same location and the same instances over and over again in order to get accurate determinations and good evidence.
Yeah, the other comment on that too is professional paranormal investigators. We also get called in the field to people's residents who may be experiencing paranormal activity. And usually that paranormal activity is negative, and that's why they call. And so in cases like that, you want to be precise what you're looking for. You want to be able to identify exactly where it was, maybe what time it was, and other factors that may be influencing the environment of the home. And this equipment is where you start. And the more advanced equipment that we're going to get onto separates the questions on what it is we're actually measuring. Is it an influence from an outside source, or could this be a paranormal event?
Now, us as a team, we're very fortunate to actually have a lot of equipment. You know, it takes teams years to build up a lot of equipment like we have now. So, okay, from here, we're going to go over some more of this more sensitive equipment that we use to get good evidence and determine whether or not a given phenomenon that we encounter is man-made or could be something else, possibly even paranormal. Right in front of me, I have some of the tri-field meters, which are excellent pieces of equipment. These are, first of all, made in America, in Utah. This one here is designed to detect man-made fields. So we have a couple of them. We're not using these to look for ghosts. We're looking to rule out possibilities, to rule out electrical interference, to rule out natural causes for a given phenomenon. And here you can see, if you can see, it detects in magnetic as well as electrical, and it detects in 3 axes, X, Y, and Z. So it's real easy to use. In this model here, you can hold in your hand and just do a whole sweep of a house. You know you're going to pick up fields near the outlets, near a microwave, near a TV set, things like that.
I get to be Vanna White.
And these right here are the natural tri-field meters. These are the Cadillacs of the EMF meter, in my opinion. They're designed to rule out man-made sources and pick up only natural magnetic fields. Well, what's a natural magnetic field? The Earth's magnetic field. When you're determining magnetic north using a compass, that's what this is built to detect. It also detects ionized atmospheres, which means storms, or localized ionizations, which could mean ghosts. Who knows? So that's what we're looking for. This is really easy to use, although unlike the regular tri-field meter, you really shouldn't hold it in your hand, because when you move, you're passing through the Earth's magnetic field, giving yourself a whole bunch of false positives. So it's better to set this down, and this one has a tripod attachment. Set it down somewhere, especially where it can be monitored by a camera perhaps, or at least a recorder, because as you can hear, it has an audio component as well. So when it goes off, you'll get that pleasant little buzzing.
Yeah, and boy, that scared me one time in a house all by myself when the thing started bleeping at me.
And the good things about this meter is to make it interesting too. It's not only scientific, so we can measure what's the electromagnetic field here on this part of the wall, this high of the wall over here. I mean, they can be used good, in measuring the paranormal. Usually in resident cases, we do extensive interviews with the client, and you may keep a meter, either one of the meters, on the table while you're conducting the interview, and sometimes the questions and the answers may disturb whoever's in the room, like a spirit, and you see reactions in the meter. And it becomes sort of an emotional tester. So the thing with the investigator is not only to note when it happened, but to try to note what was the question and what was the answer, because it may be those answers that are the underlying causes and reason for the paranormal activity in the home.
The next one we're going to show is the famous Mel meter. Viewers might remember these from Ghost Hunters. Pretty much every ghost show out there now uses the Mel meter. I was very skeptical of the Mel meter for that reason, because, oh, well, they're using it on TV, so we have to have one, right? I don't think so. But actually, I picked one up, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised with it. It detects the magnetic field and also does the ambient temperature with the attached probe here. And it's very reliable. It is durable. It's a good design for out in the field. It's backlit, which is an advantage over most of the tri-field meters, whereas, as you can see, I had to attach a light on some of the older models. And it also has a little flashlight. This model here also has a REM pod attachment, which is like the REM pod which is sitting by David here, which is actually a different type of detection method that is used, where the instrument itself is actually putting out a field, and if it's disturbed by any other electrical field, it should set the alarms off. Hold on.
There we go. I thought I was a ghost for a minute there. I couldn't set it off.
So what I'm going to do is, I have my handy dandy radio here. I'm just going to set off some of these meters. Illustrates a very good point. Be very, very careful using two-way radios in the field. We try not to use them at all unless we're in an outdoor environment, and only then at least 4 feet away from any equipment, because it interferes with everything. Also, the thermometers, the infrared thermometers and the regular thermometers using the temperature probes, as these do, same type as the Mel meter.
To talk about a negative side of paranormal investigations, as you can see, this equipment can be easily manipulated.
Well, you have more experience with the REM pods.
Very little experience. I just happen to own 2. So we were talking about REM pods, and I have had these. One was a Christmas gift. But in all the investigations I have been involved in, there was only once that I felt comfortable that the activity I was getting was actually paranormal.
That's actually really interesting that Dave brings up that REM pod incident, because that was a great example of getting more than one thing happening all at the same time, and that to us makes really great evidence. We were actually in the basement of Gallery X. The REM pod goes off. I get a cold spot, which is personal experience, And we also get this great EVP that says, I'm David on the floor with Luann. Then at the same time, we've got, you know, all of these different things lining up. So you might want to take a look at the clips and listen to the audio from that night. Brr, it is cold. I mean, really cold. It's one spot on my forearm.
I'm trying to get that. Yep, I got a thermometer for you. Yep, I got a thermometer for you. Yep, I got a thermometer for you. Yep, I got a thermometer for you.
Before we move away from the EMF meters, I just want to show this little meter that I just picked up. It's from a brand called Soix, made in Russia. It's got a great graphical interface here. It actually shows you the X, Y, and Z, so you can actually see where the field being detected is coming from. So this is going to be used in a lot of experiments going forward because it's just a nice little addition to our tool bag here. So
I love the readout on that one. I'm going to have to play with your toys.
Nice little color screen. So moving on, we also have two different types of thermometers, which I touched on a little earlier. We have the infrared thermometer, which everyone in the field is familiar with, where it casts a laser spot. I don't know if you can see that on me. Yeah, there we go. Everyone's familiar with that. It just gives you a readout in Fahrenheit or Celsius of the thermometer of the surface being read. Now, they're used a lot, but a lot of people in the field don't really know what they're looking at because you're not reading. If you're expecting to get the temperature of a cold spot in the middle of the room, you may not be getting it with this. It might go right past that to the floor behind it or the wall behind it. So what we want to do is also use a different type of thermometer, like these two here, with what's called a K-type thermometer probe, which is also on the Melmeter. This little unit here is $11 on eBay, very inexpensive. It's got a backlight. It reads out in, it actually has two hookups for two different probes, but this will give you a quick readout of the ambient air temperature. So you want to try to use both. Now, a lot of the older investigators from years past actually think that the cold spots produced by the paranormal do actually affect the infrared beam on these. So we're not actually going to toss these away. We're still going to use these and experiment around and see what works.
I personally am not thrilled about the laser ones. They're actually pretty and fun to work with, but to me the good evidence comes with the ambient thermometers. The thing with the ambient thermometers, you have to actually do the work. It's not like you can sit here and just press the button, and you actually have to go to, you know, along the walls and different heights to get a baseline reading of the room, so you can have an idea, is something happening that's different from the room, because you've already gotten your baseline readings. We get baseline readings with EMF readings to make sure we know what's going, we know what the room is set up and what it's like. And we get baseline readings with the thermometer also, so that when something happens that's abnormal, we'll know it. Believe me, I don't like to bend down. It bothers my back. I'm getting old and I'm getting grumpy. But sometimes it's worth the work. There's always room for these for certain situations, and I think the best thing to have is both.
What have you got there?
Oh, it's technical. It's one of our little toys.
Everybody should have one.
He's always wanted to do that.
Well, it's a microwave detector, basically. This is built for calibrating microwave ovens, detecting leaking microwaves. What we can use it for is for eliminating man-made radio interference, EMF, in the household. Basically, this piece here is just protecting the sensor, and this is the little reader unit with the meter on it. Just another example of how we use equipment made for other purposes adapted for what we need, which is basically eliminating natural causes for a given phenomena, alleged paranormal phenomena. so we can actually find out what's going on and rule out what might not be paranormal.
We promise we won't probe you.
And to talk about that, one of the things that you try to rule out that the paranormal activity that people may be experiencing in a home is not related to anything regarding the environment. And when doing private residence, especially older homes, we're always concerned about carbon monoxide. And everybody should have carbon monoxide detectors in their home. And in the older homes, built in the 1800s, early 1900s, they have brick chimneys, but they didn't install those clay flues like they did in the later years. And what happens, the bricks start to get old, the mortar separates, and then you start getting carbon dioxide leaks, as well as other things that would be generated from the heating source.
Now, didn't you mention one case that you had heard about where the activity actually was caused?
Yes, the folks were experiencing these terrible hallucinations, not terrible hallucinations. Later they found out they were hallucinations, but activity where they're seeing spirits, seeing shadows, hearing voices, hearing footsteps, and it was all related to CO2. In fact, one of the family members were actually hospitalized for a number of days from carbon monoxide poisoning. So, secondary to the paranormal, carbon monoxide is a very dangerous gas. So, sometimes we have to try to rule out environmental effects. Such as gas leaks, we have gas detectors to check the gas lines to ensure there's no gas leaks.
We act in many ways like a home inspection team. We're actually looking for a lot of these things where people might not think about natural causes of what they think is paranormal activity. So what he has there is an excellent example. Other things could be radon, mold, a lot of household natural everyday causes, people might think is paranormal just for lack of evidence of anything else.
And this last piece of evidence is really for our own protection. It's a cheap voltmeter, but you might be crawling in the attic and all of a sudden see some bare wires hanging down. You don't know whether they're alive or they're dead. So having something like this is a safe way of checking that out.
We are looking at the environment of a location in as many ways as possible. That means examining the electromagnetic spectrum, which means light, infrared, UV, the EMF fields. Also, radiation fields, meaning ionizing radiation like nukes, which leads me to this puppy right here. This looks really cool. It looks like a Ghostbusters trap, right? It's awesome. You show up to someone's house with this thing, you're like, wow, these people mean business. It's completely useless. It looks awesome, but it's useless for what we do. It would have to be a nuclear war in order to set this thing off. That's what it's designed for. So, fun but useless. The woman I bought this from actually said she used it when she worked in a research reactor in Portland, Oregon. Interesting tidbit. Now, that's a circuit check.
Oh, dear. Okay, I was going to start running.
Now, regular Geiger counters, such as this one, which is new to the market. It's from the same brand as the little EMF meter, SOEX, made in Russia. That could actually be very useful for us because it actually picks up very small fluctuations in background radiation. Now, with radiation, there are three types. There's alpha particles, beta particles, and the gamma rays. Without getting too technical, the gamma rays are the most potent, the most powerful. Pretty much nothing can stop them except, maybe a foot of lead. Beta particles could be stopped by a sheet of aluminum foil, and alpha particles can be stopped by the skin on your hand. So what we want to do is try to detect as many of these as possible. Now, detecting alpha particles is a big problem because it's very expensive. You need a specialized equipment, a specialized pancake Geiger tube with a mica window in order to allow in the alpha particles. But this is a good intermediate step. This was only about a little under $200. I got a good deal on eBay again. This will detect the beta particles and the gamma rays. In order to show you that it actually works, I have a little piece of uranium ore here that came from California. I'm just going to put it right over the meter for a second. Might be able to hear it clicking.
Why don't you put it next to your real microphone?
And if you can see, the screen just turned red saying dangerous. So you know this thing works. Now, as far as paranormal goes, we don't know if the paranormal can change the radiation background of an environment. And frankly, there's little evidence of that. But people in the past have found in cases such as the Entity case of the 70s that they based the movie off of, the background radiation actually dropped to nothing from a normal background, which is between 0.8 and 0.12 microsieverts per hour, which is the measuring unit of background radiation. So just another part of the environment that we're looking at.
I don't know how much truth it is, but it's been reported that Chernobyl has a tremendous amount of paranormal activity there. It's also it's still very high regarding radiation from the accident. How those two go together, I don't think anybody truly knows, because there was enough tragedy that happened there just to make that a paranormal hotspot. But it is an interesting correlation that it is high with radioactive activity as well as paranormal.
A lot of energy is in the environment, and we all know that it's thought that the paranormal can suck the energy out of the environment. So if that's the case, there's definitely a possibility of that happening there. So lastly, we're going to go to a couple of pieces of equipment specifically made for the paranormal. This one here is called a periscope. This is the Periscope 360 because it's round. This is
my feet.
This detects static electricity. So again, it detects a natural phenomena, but it helps us examine the environment in another way.
I don't know if you can see the lights, but
The
I'm
little
all
lights
charged up
flash
full of static.
when static electricity is present. A small piece of equipment that was designed for paranormal use was adapted by myself, actually, from a little piece of equipment built by hobbyists. This is called a Magic Eye VU meter. And as you can see, the little meter moves when I talk. So it's actually, what we're doing is experimenting with it with EVP use. I'm going to hook it up to a recorder, and perhaps we can actually visually see when an EVP voice is responding to one of our questions. Just another little piece of experimental equipment, and to be honest, it looks really cool.
Or when they're just having long conversations in between themselves, which happens every now and then.
Certainly.
So what this all comes down to is Whaling City Ghosts has a lot of equipment. It costs a lot of money, but we're serious about what we're doing. You know, for people out there who want to start out, a camera, a recorder, maybe a temperature gauge, you don't have to spend a fortune to go out and have a good time. But for people who are looking to be more serious, maybe start a team, you'll definitely want to look into some of these pieces of equipment that we're using. But we did enjoy having you here, as always. And I have to thank Mark and David for coming down here and showing us all of this equipment that they've worked so hard to get together. And I hope to see you next time on Whaling City Ghosts Presents, because you never know where we're going to go.